Hi everyone, this is Mrs. Parr, and on this episode of Math Up to Par, we are going to be talking about probability and specifically about representing probability on a number line. So let's talk about probability. Probability is the chance of an event occurring. If you haven't yet, please go back and watch my other videos on probability using words and representing probability as a fraction because it will help this video make a lot more sense. So go back and watch those now if you haven't already, and then come back to this one to learn about how to represent it on a number line. Okay, so we talked about this in our video about probability using numbers. So this is important information to review before we represent it on a number line. So probability is quantified as a number between 0 and 1. An event is impossible if it has a probability of 0. An event is certain if it has a probability of 1. Okay, so we're going to use these things and we're going to place them on a number line. So this is a number line right here, and I know number lines can seem really scary sometimes, but they're not. Okay, so ignore this stuff down here for right now because I'm going to move this around to create our number line. So this line right here is going to represent 0. Okay, this line right here is going to represent 1. Well, we said if something is definitely going to happen, it's certain, and it's represented by the number 1. If something is impossible, it's represented by the number 0, okay? Everything in between, okay, means it's a possible chance. Well, if I split my line in half, halfway in the middle is 1/2, okay? If there is an even chance that something would happen, then it would be equally likely, okay? Now, listen to me very carefully when I say this next part. Impossible, equally likely, and certain are exact points, okay? If something is certain, it's 100%. There's nothing different that it can be. It's absolutely one whole percent or one whole chance that it will happen. If it's impossible, there's no other chance. It's an exact point, and it's the exact number. It's impossible. Equally likely has to be exactly in half, okay? My words likely and unlikely are a big range, okay? So from impossible to equally likely is a range, okay? If something is more than impossible but less than equally likely, then we would call it unlikely. If something is more than equally likely but less than certain, then we call that likely. So these words are big ranges. Sometimes you might have a point on the line, right? It might be right here. That might represent something that is really unlikely. It's almost impossible, but there's a small chance. Or you might have something over here that is almost an equal chance of it happening, but it's still less than that, so it's unlikely. Or you could have something right in the middle here that's just kind of unlikely. There's a little chance it could happen, a lot of chance it won't. So unlikely and likely, because the same thing goes for over here, something can be really close to certain but not quite, or really close to equally likely but not quite. So likely and unlikely are ranges. They could be a lot of things. So those can be represented with any fraction that's greater than 1/2 but less than 1. And unlikely can be any fraction that is less than 1/2 but greater than 0. So remember that impossible, equally likely, and certain are exact points, and we can see that on a number line, but unlikely and likely are all the chances in between those. So it's really cool to look at. All right, guys, thanks so much for listening, and be sure to check out my other videos on probability, and I wish you happy practicing.